Hello friends! Today we are gonna create a full stack blog application using Next.js and MongoDB. On the home page we have some categories, latest posts, and on the right side we have the most popular and featured posts. And we will fetch all this data from our database. And here we have a dark mode toggle that we can change our theme. We can choose any category. Let's open up the single post, and here we have the comment section. If we are not logged in, it's gonna show this link. We can log in using our social accounts, and right now I can add a new comment. And as you realize, after the authentication we have two more links here. We can log out or create a new post, and this page is just like medium.com. If I switch to light mode, you can see the similarity. Let's add a title and description. And the best thing is when you select any text here, you can give some styles. You can make them bigger, you can add any link, or just copy and paste any external content. And here you can add any cover image or video. Let's publish. And it's here. And this app is fully responsive. It's a great project to improve your React and design skills. You will learn server-side and client-side data fetching, advanced queries with MongoDB and Prisma, server-side authentication and API security, pagination, context API, and more. And at the end of the video, we will deploy our application using Hostinger. As you know, it's the hosting sponsor of Llamadev, and I create different projects using Hostinger every month on this channel. And for this project, I'm gonna choose a VPS hosting because it's a full stack application and we need to run Node.js for the backend server. And you will see how easy to install Node.js apps with just one click. And all of these servers are super fast because they use NVMe SSDs and one of the most powerful AMD processors. Let's choose the most popular one. And if you use the link in the description below and Llamadev coupon code here, you are gonna get an extra discount. After purchasing, you are ready to set up your server. You can choose any location. We are gonna install a control panel, and it's gonna be Cloud Panel. Let's create a password and finish setup. It's gonna take a while, and after that it will be ready to deploy our apps. So if you are ready, let's create our app and deploy it here. Okay, I created here a new folder, and inside this folder, let's create our next application. To do that, I'm gonna be using my GitHub repository. If you visit this page, you are gonna see this repository, and here we have our starter branch. We are gonna be using this branch because it includes our images here, and I removed all the unnecessary files and styles. So we are gonna write everything from scratch. So let's come back and copy this URL. And I will say git clone single branch. I'm gonna write here my branch name, starter. I will paste my URL, dot, and enter. Okay, they are here. Let's install our libraries. I'm using Yarn, so I will say Yarn. If you are using npm, you can say npm install. And it's gonna install all the necessary libraries, and we can start after that. During this process, let me explain you the structure of the application. We are using Next.js, and let's say this is our app directory. And in this directory, we will create the backend API that we can connect to the DB and make CRUD operations. And we will have the front-end part. And here, we will create some pages and reusable components. And when creating them, we should consider the rendering method. Because in Next.js, we can render components on the server side or client side. To decide which one to choose, you can ask yourself these questions. Is SEO important? If the answer is yes, you should use a server-side component because search engines can directly reach to the entire HTML document of the page and index the content easily. Another question is, do I need to keep the resource safe? You may want to access the backend resources directly, or maybe you have some sensitive information to hide from client. In this case, again, choose the server side. But if you need any user interaction, like event listeners, you should use a client-side component. And when you need to use React hooks like useState, useEffect, you should prefer the client side. For example, our homepage, category page, and single post page will be on the server side because we'll fetch the data. And the login page and add new post page will be on the client side because we need some user interaction and we will use many hooks inside them. So let's design our app and after take care of this backend part. Okay, it's ready. Let's start our application. I will say yarn run dev. Okay, it's ready. Let's start. And it's here. So let's give our initial style. If you check the source file, you are gonna see that there is a global CSS here. It's basically the main CSS file that we can use in every pages, every components. So I can define my background color, text color, or link colors here because I'm gonna be using them in the entire application. So let's define our background color first. To do that, I can create variables. I will say root and let's say background color, and the default color will be white because when we visit our website, the default theme will be light theme. Let's define our text color. I will say black. And I'm going to define two more variables. Soft BG is going to be this gray color. It's something like white, but a little bit darker. So I will do the same thing for text color. It's going to be black, but a little bit softer. Like that. Okay, let's select our old document. And I want to remove this padding and margin. By default, there is a margin here. So let's say padding 0, margin 0, and box sizing will be border box. And after that, I'm gonna create my body and I will say 100 VW because I wanna prevent any overflowing. To do that, I will say overflow X and hidden. And what about links? Let's see first. I'm gonna create here a link. Next.js link, and I will say hello. And as you can see, by default, there is a color and this underline. Let's remove them. I will say color will be inherit. It basically means take this color from the parent, and text decoration will be none. And this style is gonna apply for all links in our application. As you can see, it's empty right now. Okay. So let's give our background color. I'm not gonna give it here because, as I said, we are gonna toggle between our themes and it's gonna apply to our container. To do that, I'm gonna open up my layout. Let's close here, by the way. And as you can see, the body is here. Inside, I'm gonna create my container. So let's say div. And I'm gonna wrap this children. And the class name will be container. And let's come here. And for this container, I'm gonna give minimum height 100 VH, and the background color will be our background color. So I'm gonna be using variable, and as you can see, it's here. Let's use it. And the text color will be again variable and text color. Okay, why it's not here? Let's use it like that. As you can see, background white, color is black. And after that, let's create our layout. So I'm gonna create here one more div because I wanna give some space for the left and right side, and our design will be responsive. When we shrink our page, we are gonna change its size. You are gonna understand what I mean by that. Let's say wrapper, like that, and I'm gonna come here and say wrapper, and the maximum width will be 1536 pixels, and I'm gonna center this. I will say margin left and right auto. As you can see, let's give background color and you can see better. It's centered. And also I want to give here some padding because when we shrink our page, it's gonna get closer to here. And for the mobile screens, it's gonna start from this line. I don't wanna do that. I wanna give some space. So let's say padding left, 80 pixels, and right. Okay. So let's make this layout responsive. Firstly, let's add here. Where's our page here? I'm gonna add some more texts, maybe even more. And I can add here title, for example. And let's see. Okay. And right now I'm gonna open up my console. And in this point, I'm gonna decrease my wrapper size. So we are gonna have some more space here. And when we shrink more, we are gonna add some more space. And our layout will be responsive all the time. You are gonna understand better right now. I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna choose my first breakpoint. To do that, I will say media screen. And I'm gonna write here my breakpoint, 1536. And when we are on this point, I'm gonna change my wrapper and max width will be 1366. Let's get back. This is the big screen. If I come here, changes its size. And if I get more, I can do the same thing. Let's create another breakpoint. I'm just gonna duplicate this. And I'm gonna write here another common breakpoint, and in this case its size will be 1024, like that. And if we are in the 1024 again, and this time it's gonna be 768 pixels. Those all sizes are really commonly used, so I don't recommend you to change those points. And as you can see, we have more space. But in this case, what I want to do is decreasing those paddings. Remember, it was 80 pixels. But I will say, make them 40 pixels. Okay, and this point, I'm gonna create another breakpoint. Let's remove those paddings, and I'm gonna write it here and change this number. And if we are on this point, it's gonna be 475 pixels. Okay, and this is the mobile screen. It's that easy, guys. When we add our HTML element, you are gonna see how useful to create those layouts. If you write them at the beginning of the application, everything will be much easier for you. Okay, let's close this console and open up our application. I will say localhost 3001, and this is the completed version of our application. And let's see what we are gonna need. This is our home page. So firstly, we are gonna need this navbar, this featured section, categories component. We have our post list, And on the right side, we have our menu. We are gonna need this pagination component and finally this footer. So let's create our components and use them inside our homepage. So I'm gonna come here in the source folder and I will create my components folder. And the first one will be navbar. And inside, I will say navbar JSX, and I'm gonna create my function. And to give some style, we are gonna need a file, and it's gonna be navbar module.css. It's gonna create a unique class name for each individual component. Let's do that. I will say class name, and let's import our styles from navbar. So I can use it here and say container. Let's copy this and create one more component, footer. I will paste and change my name. And let's create this file. And I will save them. And let's use them in our home page. Right now I don't need them. I can delete and paste here navbar and footer. Let's import. Okay, they are here. If I open my console, as you can see, this is our main container. And inside we have wrapper and our navbar and footer. Of course, we didn't give any style yet. I will say container, background color red. I will do the same thing for footer, and it's gonna be, let's say, blue. And right now, as you can see, we have different class names. So let's close here and delete our backgrounds. And for this wrapper. Okay, so if we check our application, if I write here any post ID, you are gonna see that we are still using this navbar and footer. So basically we are gonna use those components in all pages. So instead of writing them one by one for each page, I can write it in my layout. Let's remove them. And open up layout, and I'm gonna create here my navbar and footer and wrap my children. By the way, you can change your website title and description. It's important for SEO. By the way, there is no object fit for this image. We are gonna change it. But before, let's create our other components. Remember, we have featured items, categories, cart list, and menu, and this pagination. So I'm gonna copy this folder and paste. And let's change them. I'm gonna change them quickly. Okay, we have all our components and let's use them. I'm gonna close everything here and open up my page. Let's give our class name here. It's gonna be container. Firstly, I'm gonna call my featured component. And after that, we are gonna have our category list. And I'm gonna create here a container. Let's say content, and it's gonna include our cart list and this menu. I'm creating another container that because we are gonna make this container display flags. And inside I will say cart list and menu. And inside this cart list, I'm gonna call my pagination component. And that's all. Let's see. All of them are here. Let's start with this navbar. We have social icons, logo, and those links. So let's create 3 items. I'm gonna open up my navbar, and inside this container, social, logo, and let's say links. By the way, as you can see, I'm using here a shortcut. It gives me a div with class name and styles. I can directly give here any class name. If you don't know how I'm doing this, you can watch my VS Code extensions video. Basically, I'm creating a new snippet using an extension. Anyway, let's continue. As you can see, we have 4 items, 4 images. Let's create quickly. I'm gonna call Next.js image. Source will be Facebook. And I need to give some width and height. Let's say 24. And I'm gonna duplicate this, and it's gonna be Instagram, TikTok. I don't know why I use TikTok, but and YouTube. Okay, they are here. And let's create our logo. It's gonna be just the text. I will directly paste. And here we have some items, some links. Next.js link. And the first one will be homepage. href, and it's gonna be the home page. And we are gonna have contact, about page, and what else? As you can see, we have toggle button. To do that, I can create one more component. And we are gonna have this login button, but if we are logged in, we are gonna see here another link that we can create new post, and we are gonna create logout button. To do that, we have to listen the user session, and in order to do that, our component should be a client component because we are gonna be using a session hook. I wanna keep my navbar as a server-side component. So basically, we are gonna need a client-side component just for those authentication links. Let's create our components. First one will be theme toggle. CSS file and JSX file. Let's import our style here. Of course, import styles from this path, and I'm gonna give my class name. And let's copy this and create one more. And I will say auth links. Like that. And the CSS. Okay. So after this about link, I can call my component. And before this homepage link, I can call my toggle, theme toggle. Okay, it's time to give some styles. I'm gonna close everything and open up my navbar here and CSS here. So let's make this container display flags. So our items will be horizontal. Let's separate them. Firstly, I'm gonna center them vertically and justify content space between. Okay, what about those social icons? Let's copy this and again, display flags, and I'm gonna give a gap between each item, 10 pixels. I can do the same thing for those links here. Display flags, and gap between them will be, let's say 20 pixels. It's gonna be more. And I can give a height for my navbar, because in our example, as you can see, there is a height, and our items are centered. So I will say height 100. But as you realize, there is something wrong here. In our application, the logo is in the middle of the navbar, but in our project, it's going to the left side. To prevent this, I'm gonna give a width for each item, for this social, logo, and those links. If I do that, they are gonna have exactly the same size, so we can see our logo in the middle. We have social, logo, and links. I'm gonna give exactly the same size. Flex 1, flex 1, flex 1. Basically, we are saying split this flex box into 3 pieces and give exactly the same size for each item. If I make this 2, for example, in this case, our social container will be twice smaller than logo. Let's try actually. I will say a color. As you can see, this is 1 unit and this logo container is 2 units. If I make this 1, each item will be exactly the same size. So if I center my text here, let's delete this background and say text align center. As you can see, this is what we want. Okay, let's increase this font size and font weight. 36, font weight will be bold. Perfect. And for those links, it's gonna be 20 pixels. Okay, right now, instead of this text, I can create my login button. Let's open up our component. And for now, I'm gonna create here a status, a fake status, and it's gonna be not authenticated. It's gonna be temporary. And after creating our authentication functionality, we are gonna take this status from our hook. But for now, let's use it. So I'm gonna come here and create a condition. I'm not gonna need any container or div here. It's gonna be directly our links. And I'm gonna write here my condition. I will say if status equals not authenticated, show here something. If it's not, show something else. So if we are not authenticated, I can show here the login link. Login. And if we are authenticated, I'm gonna create another link and it's gonna be right. So if we have a user, we will be able to create any post. And I'm gonna create a span here and it's gonna be our logout button. Of course, we are gonna need some parent. I can directly use fragments. Let's see. As you can see, login button is here. But if we are authenticated, right and logout button. By the way, it's not a link, so I can give here cursor pointer. So I'll say class name, styles, and link. Let's open up quickly our style, and I will just say cursor pointer. Okay. So I'm gonna take this back. We are gonna see our login button and let's take care of our theme toggle. Firstly, I'm gonna give some style and I'm gonna create this toggle. Let me zoom in. And after, we are gonna create this functionality. Firstly, we are gonna have a container and inside this container, we are gonna have 2 images, this moon and this sun. And I'm gonna create this circle div. And when I click on this container, we are gonna change its position and its color. Let's do that. Let's close everything and open up toggle. And CSS here. And inside this container, let's create our images. Next image. Source will be moon.png. Let's give width and height is going to be 14 pixels. And it's going to be sun. And between them, I'm going to create another div. And its style will be, let's say, ball or circle, whatever. So let's take care of this container first. I'm going to give some width and height. Let's say border radius 50%. I will say cursor pointer, and I'm gonna use display flex. My items will be horizontal. Let's zoom in. So let's change its background color. Let's say black. By the way, this radius is too much. Let's make this pixels. And let's center them vertically. Align items center. And I'm gonna separate my items using justify content and space between. Okay, so let's create our ball. It's gonna be 50 pixels. And border radius will be 50%. And background color, let's say white for now. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is make the position of this ball absolute. Because at the beginning, it's gonna be on the left. But when I click here, it's gonna be on the right. So if I say left 0, for example, it's not gonna be here because its parent is not relative. To prevent this, don't forget to use position relative for the parent. Actually, let's say 1 pixel. Okay, it's much better. And when I click, it's gonna be right 1 pixel. So how we are gonna implement this dark mode functionality? To do that, we can use React Context API. Let's open up our menu. And inside source folder, I'm gonna create context. And inside, let's say team context, JSX, and let's close here and create our context. I will say export const team context, and I'm gonna use create context. It comes from React, and right now I can create my context provider. Export const team context provider. If you don't know how to use Context API, don't worry, I'm gonna explain. And finally, we are gonna wrap this children with our provider, team context.provider, and inside children. Okay, there is a problem. It's not defined because I didn't say const, export const. And let me explain. Basically, we created our team context, and using this context, we are gonna store our team state. At the beginning, it's gonna be light mode, and using that state, we are gonna decide the background color of this application or text color of this application or whatever. So we are gonna need that state. And after that, we are gonna create an action. When we click on this button, we are gonna dispatch that action, and we are gonna basically say, check the state. If it's the light mode, make it dark. If it's the dark mode, make it light. So we are gonna need two things, our team state and toggle functionality. And we are gonna store those items inside our context, and when we wrap our application with this context provider, we will be able to use that team state and toggle functionality in everywhere. So I will say const team set team use state hook, and at the beginning, as I said, it's gonna be the light mode, but there is something important here. When we click here and make it dark mode, and when we refresh the page, it's gonna be light mode again because of this use state. To prevent this, we can store this state in our local storage. Let's open up application. As you can see, it's empty. We can create here a key and value can be light mode. So let's actually create here a function. I'll say const get from storage, local storage. And I'm gonna check my value using local storage. And I will say get item and team. And I'm gonna return this value. But there is something important here. If we visit this page for the first time, we are not gonna have anything inside this storage. It's gonna be empty. And I will say in this case, if it's empty, make it light. By the way, we are using useState, and obviously our component will be a client-side component. So I will say use client. And right now I can use this local storage, this function. I will say return get from local storage. Of course, there's a typo here. There is one more bracket. Okay. Why I'm creating here a function? Because remember, Next.js is using server-side rendering by default. Even if you write here use client, at the beginning it's a server-side component, but you are trying to use browser local storage. But in our server, there is no browser. So during this transition, it's going to cause some problem. To prevent this, I'm going to say if type of window is not undefined. We are saying if the transition is completed, if it's the client component, use that local storage. It's a little bit weird when you use Next.js because in React it's much easier, but in Next.js we have some additional steps. We are gonna do one more thing after that, you are gonna see, but for now let's wrap our application with this provider and use our context. So I'm gonna open up my layout, and after this body I will say team provider. It's here, team context provider. Like that. Right now I can use my state everywhere. For example, inside this toggle component, let's open up and let's call our context. I will say const team is going to come from our context. I will say use context hook and team context. And remember, we are using a hook and it should be a client component. But of course, we didn't pass our team yet. Let's open up our context. As you can see, we are wrapping our children, but we are not passing anything. So I'm going to say value, and I'm going to pass here my team. Let's try to use it. I'm going to open up console. And as you can see, this is the light mode. So using this theme, I can change my style, but I want to change the entire background. To do that, I can use this theme context in my layout. But remember, if you do that, you have to use this use context hook. And in this case, it's going to be client component. But I don't want to do that. That's because it's a server component and I'm using this title and description. I want to keep this as a server-side component, so I can come here and create another component. Actually, let's create other folder, and I will say providers, and I'm going to create team provider. And in the future, we are going to create our session provider. This is why I created this folder. I will create my function. I will make it client component. Let's do exactly the same thing. I'm gonna copy this and paste here. Let's import them. And using this theme, I want to change my class name here. I will say class name is gonna be theme, dark or light. I can use this theme in my global CSS. And at the beginning, remember, we already used the light mode. Background color white, text color black. But if it's the dark, I'm gonna change those variables. So let's come here after this link. I will say if it's the dark mode, BG will be this color, text color will be this color, and soft BG. And finally soft text color. Like that. Of course, not comma, it's gonna be semicolon. Okay, Right now I'm going to change my theme, but we don't have our functionality yet. Let's test it using light mode, and I'm going to use this theme provider. Let's open up our layout and wrap our application. And of course it's going to be our children, but we didn't take any. Let's take children and wrap them here. Okay. And as you can see, our background is dark right now. So let's create our functionality. I'm going to come here and I'm going to create a function inside this provider. I will say const toggle set theme, and I will say if theme equals light, it's going to be dark. If it's dark, it's going to be light. And I can send this toggle right now. But remember, we are using local storage. When we change this, we should also change our local storage. To do that, I can use useEffect hook. And whenever our theme changes, we are going to update our local storage. So I will say set item, our theme. We are going to change its value. So let's use this toggle function in our navbar. I mean in this toggle, I will say toggle. And when I click here on click, I'm going to call this function. Let's click, and perfect. Dark and light. As you can see, it's still light. And if I refresh, it's still dark. And if you are using some other browsers, you might have some problems because, as I said, we are using local storage. If you run into some problems, you can open up your theme provider and create here a use state. And I'm going to check if the component is mounted or not. And using useEffect hook, I can make sure my component is a client-side component first. I'm going to set my state. And I can write here a condition. If my component is ready, return these children. Let's close everything and let's change this style. Let's check our application. As you can see, when it's dark, its background is white and this ball is black, and we are changing its position. So I'm going to open up my toggle, and using this theme, I can change its position. So I'm going to come here and give inner style, and I'm going to write here my condition. Let's use theme, and I will say if it's dark, the left position will be 1 pixel and background color will be this dark color. And if it's not, if it's light, this time right will be 1 and background color will be white. So I can do the same thing for my container. Actually, you can directly write here background color, and we can use any variable. And remember, text color is white. Okay, it's something like gray, but I want to make this white. So I don't want to use my CSS. I'm going to give inner style. If it's dark, the background will be white. If it's light, the background will be this color. So I can remove them. Here, this and this left. Okay, it's still dark. If it's dark, background color will be white. If it's not, okay, we changed here. Okay, it's still acting like a server-side component. Of course, inside code, let's actually run this again. Okay, there is no problem. But why it's not white? Oh, because I forgot changing my global CSS. It's gonna be dark mode. Okay, perfect. When I click, it's gonna be dark. By the way, those are not vertically centered. Let's open up our navbar. Align item center, but inside links we don't have. Okay, awesome. So what about responsive design? So I'm gonna open up my console. For the large page, we don't have any problem. For here, and for this point, I can decrease my font size. Let's do that. Let's close everything and open up navbar. And I'm gonna write my media query. Maximum size will be 1280. And for logo, font size will be 32 pixels. It was 36. And for those links, it was 20. In this case, it's gonna be 18 pixels. And I'm gonna decrease the gap between them. It's gonna be 15. Okay, and when it's 1024, I'm gonna delete those icons. Let's duplicate this. 1024 pixels. I will say social, and I'm gonna remove this. Display none. And for the logo, it was centered, remember. Text align will be left. And when it's smaller, in this point, I can decrease this size a little bit more. Let's say 24 pixels. And when it comes to mobile screen, I'm gonna remove these links. Instead, I'm gonna create here a mobile menu. And when I click on that menu, it's gonna open up here a container and we will be able to see our links. To do that, actually, I can use these auth links. Remember, we have another component here. I can use it because we are gonna be using on-click event and we cannot do this in server-side component. So I can directly use that component. But before, I will say, if it's mobile screen, remove those links. But if I say that, it's gonna remove our auth component also. So instead of links, I'll say link. And I'm gonna give class name for those links. Styles.link. Okay, right now I can create here a button. Let's open up our component here. And I'm gonna create here a use state. I'll say const open, set open, use state hook. At the beginning it's gonna be closed. So I will say false. Of course, it's gonna be use client. And here I'm gonna create a button. Let's say div burger. Let's create 3 lines inside. Basically, instead of using any image, I'm gonna create my own menu. Let's come here. And I will say burger menu. It's gonna be width 20 pixels, height 16 pixels. I can use display flags, but direction will be different. It's gonna be a column. And if I say justify content space between, it's gonna separate them. Let's create our lines and you can see better. 100%, height will be just 2 pixels and the background color will be text color. Oops, I said lines, it's gonna be line. Okay, it's still white. Text color. Let's open up global CSS. Actually, let's create for light mode also. And copy this. Oh, there's a comma here. That was the problem. But anyway, it can stay. And let's see. Okay, perfect. Let's give cursor pointer. And when I click on this button, by the way, I gave cursor pointer here. It's gonna be in the parent. And when I click here, I'm gonna show another container. Let's write here a condition, and I will say if it's open, let's create here a div. I'm gonna close my menu, and let's say responsive menu. I'm gonna create my links. Again, home page and others. And I can do exactly the same thing here. I will copy this and paste like that. And let's write here our onClick event. I will say set open. It's gonna be the opposite. And they are here. So let's give our style. At the beginning, it's gonna be display none. We are not gonna see that. Let's say display none. I can delete this. And if it's for the mobile screens, it can show up. Let's create media query. It's going to be display flex. Like that. And I can delete those items. For login and these. And when it's the small screen, they are going to be display none. And I can move them here. In my navbar, I'm gonna say links, justify content, flex and like that. And finally, this responsive container, what was the name? Responsive menu. Let's actually create this here. And I will say position absolute because it's gonna contain all our screen. Top will be 100 pixels. Because our navbar is 100 pixels, it's gonna start from here. And I will say left 0. Background color is gonna be BG. And I'm gonna give height. I will use calculate method, that because it's gonna be full screen. But remember, our navbar is 100 pixels. Don't forget to give here a space. And width will be 100%. Okay, let's center them here. I'll say display flags. Flags direction will be column. Align item center. Justify content center. And gap between each item will be, let's say 50. And font size will be bigger. Let's open up. And perfect. Okay. So let's take care of featured. Let me zoom out. As you can see, we have a huge title here. And after we have an image and post details. Let's create them. I will close everything and open up featured. Quickly, I'm going to create my title, styles.title, and this part of the title will be bold. Hey, llama dev here, and after that, let's create a post. It's going to have an image container and text container. Inside this container, we are going to have an image I'm gonna give my source, and I will say fill. So it's gonna fill this container. In this case, remember, we have to make this position relative. And inside this text container, we have title, this description, and a button. Read more. Let's give class name. Post description and button. Okay, let's open up our CSS file here. Firstly, I'm gonna give here a margin top. I'm gonna separate my navbar and this container. As you can see, we don't have any width and height for this container, image container. We are gonna handle that. But before, let's give this font size. It's really big. For post, again, margin top, I will say display flags because they are horizontal. Align item center, and gap between this image container and text container will be 50 pixels. Let's give size for the image container. So basically I can give again flex 1, so they can be equal. And after I'm gonna give here height, and position will be relative. Okay, and for this image, I will just give object width. It's going to be cover. And for the text container, I can give some space between my items. To do that, I'm going to be using column flags and gap between them 20. Let's increase this size. Font size 40 pixels. Like that. And for this description, let's say 20, and font weight will be a little bit smaller, and the color will be, let's say, soft text color. Okay, and finally for this button, I'm gonna give some padding from top and bottom, left and right. I'm gonna delete the border, it's gonna be none, and finally border radius, let's say 5 pixels. As you can see, it's too big. So let's say with maximum content. By the way, why it's bold? It should be only this one. Okay, let's give class name. So I can come here and say font weight 300. Okay, so it was already bold, so I decreased this weight. In this case, we don't need this class name. And after that, we can create our category lists. Let's make this light. And inside, we are going to have a title. And after that, we are going to create a container that contains every individual category. Let's close them and open up category component. H1 tag, this title, and after I will say categories and category inside. Let's give class name for this. It's going to be title, and inside each category we are going to have an image and this text. And when we click here, it's going to open up the blog page. So let's create a link. And inside I will say image. And after this image, we are going to have the category name. Let's say style. I'm going to give my source here. Style.png. 32. Height. And I will say class name. Okay, let's give our link. It's gonna be the blog page, and we are gonna give here any category name. It's gonna be style. Okay, and as you realize, each category has different background color, so I can specify them using their titles. So I can add here one more class name. I'm gonna cut this. Actually, I can delete this div. We already have our container, this link. So I will say class name. I'm gonna be using backtick, and it's gonna be category and also style, the name of the category. So I'm gonna do the same thing for others. Let me actually copy and paste them. There is nothing different here. Like that, as you can see, coding, culture, travel, and whatever. Let's see. I will make this light mode. As you can see, they are here. Right now we can give our style. Firstly, I'm gonna give here a space. They are too close. I'm gonna open up my CSS here. And I'm gonna give here a margin. Actually, I can give it for this title because there is a space here also. So I can give both for the top and bottom. So I will say title, margin 50 pixels and 0 from left and right. And for the categories, I will say display flags. Flags will be wrap. And I will say justify content space between. And 20 pixels gap. Okay, what about each category? I'm gonna center them. Display flags, align item center. Let's give gap. Perfect. And I'm gonna capitalize the first letter of the category text. To do that, I will say text transform, capitalize. Okay, and what about those images? I will just give border radius, it's gonna be circle. Perfect. For the category, I can give different background colors. To do that, I will say category, and remember, we have additional style here, we can use it. And the background color will be this color. Let's give some padding here. Actually, I can directly give a width and height. It's gonna be 50%. Height will be 80 pixels. And I'm gonna center everything. Justify content center. Like that. Let's give border radius here 10 pixels. Okay, so let's do the same thing for others. I'm gonna give different colors. I will copy and paste them. There is nothing complex here. I'm just giving different backgrounds. And awesome. And when I shrink the page, we are going to give responsive design, and it's going to look better. There is a problem because we gave here percentage. That's why it looks weird. And also, I didn't give any responsive design for this site. Let's do that. I forgot. I'm going to open up my featured CSS. And firstly, I'm going to decrease this font size. I will say media query. I'm going to give my breakpoint. It's going to affect my title. And font size will be 72. Like that. And when I shrink more, I can decrease again. It's gonna be 64. What about this post? I can actually delete this image. Let's say display none. And if it's smaller, I can decrease this size more. 46. And finally, for the mobile screen, it's gonna be a little bit smaller, 36. Here will be 48, here will be 36. Okay, perfect. For those categories, if it's in this size, width will be 20%. Let's do that. This size, I'm gonna say single category. It was 15, but this time it's gonna be 20%. Perfect. And if it's smaller, it's gonna be 25. Awesome. And when it's smaller, we are gonna see only 2 items here. Let's say 45. Perfect. And finally, for the small screen, it's gonna be 100%. So we can see only 1 item per line. Perfect. It's that easy. Okay. And right now we can take care of this content. Remember, in the home page, we have created a container and it contains this cart list and this menu. Basically, it's going to be display flags. Let's do that. I'm going to close here and everything here. And let's open up our home page here. Okay, we have class name. And I will say content, display flags, and gap between items will be 50. That's all. Like that. So let's give some size for them. In our example, as you can see, this site is bigger than this site. So I'm gonna give flags, and this container will be flags 5, and this container will be flags 2. So it's gonna be 2.5 bigger than this menu. So let's open up cart list and container. I will say flags 5, and for the menu, it's gonna be flags 2. Like that. Okay, so let's take care of this cart list. Again, we are gonna have title, some space here, and after that we are gonna have carts container, which contains every individual cart. They have an image container, text container, and those items. It's gonna be really easy. Let's come here. Okay, this is the home page. I'm gonna open up cart list. Let's close this menu. And I will say h1 tag, this title, quickly give class name, styles, and title. And after that, we are gonna have our posts, and inside a single post. And again, image container, text container. Inside this image container, we are gonna have our image. I should create snippet for this image also, I think. Let's give our temporary data here. And I will say fill. Actually, we can create different component for single post. It's gonna be easier. Let's open up components, and I will say cart. JSX and module. Let's import this here. And write it here. Okay, let's take those And I'm gonna remove this like that. Let's import image. And I'm gonna call my cart here. Actually, I can call multiple times like that. Okay, we are gonna need image container size. But before, let's create our texts. We have some details here, which includes date and category, and after title, description, and this link. So let's say detail is gonna have a span, let's say any date, and category. I'm gonna give class name. And for this one, it's gonna be date. And after this div, I can create my h1 tag. It's gonna be my title. Let's copy here. A p tag. And this link. Actually, I can give link for this h1 also. When we click here, we can visit our single blog page. Let's see. Of course, we can't see because of this image. Let's give our style first. Firstly, I will say margin bottom. I will say display flags. Gap between image container and text container will be 50 pixels. And I will say align item center. Let's create our image container. After we can see our component, I will say flags 1. And for the text container, I will do the same thing. So they are gonna be equal. I will give any height here, semicolon and height, and I will say position relative. Right now we can see it. Okay, but we don't have any space here. Let's open up our cart list. Here, for the title, remember what we are doing, margin 50 and 0. Okay, awesome. I will give object fit for this image. Did I give class name or not? Okay, I didn't. Styles.image. Cover. Okay. And for the text container, I'm gonna make them vertical, flags direction column, and gap between them 30 pixels. And for this date, I'm gonna change the color. And for this category, and between them, I will give a dash. Let's actually give it here, like that. For this date, color will be gray. And for the category, color will be this red color, and font weight will be a little bit thicker. And for the description, I'm gonna increase font size and decrease font weight. Description, font size 18 pixels, and font weight will be 300. And color will be soft text color. Okay, it's not here because I didn't give any class name. Styles.description. Let's do the same thing for this link. Let's see first. As you can see, it's much better. If I open up the dark mode, it's gonna be much softer. For this link, I'm gonna give some border bottom. It's gonna be 1 pixel, solid, and our red color. As you can see, its size is full. To get rid of this, remember what we are doing with maximum content. And I will give some padding between top and bottom. And awesome. So what about this menu? And we are going to have three main sections. This popular posts, categories, and editor's pick. This and this component will be similar, so it's going to be easy to create. So let's start with this subtitle and this title. I will say h2 tag. I'm going to copy and paste. If you have this problem, you can basically use curly brackets and a quote. I will say h1, most popular. And finally, I can create my div. I will say items and a single item. Actually, let's make this link so we can click and visit the post. For now, it can stay like that, link. And inside, we are going to have some texts, but in this side, as you can see, we have an image also. Since we are using exactly the same item, let's actually start with this one. And when we create this one, we are just going to remove this image. So I'm going to create image container and text container. And inside text container, we are going to have category, title, and those details. Image container, text container. Inside this, we are going to have an image. I'm going to use exactly the same image. And I will say fill. I'm going to give class name because remember, we are going to need object fit. I didn't import. Let's import. And inside text, I will say span. Let's say travel. And again, remember, we are going to have two class names because we are going to have different background colors. So I will say category. Of course, inside backtick. And one more, and it's going to be travel. And after this span, let's create another h tag. I'll just create random text. Of course, it's going to be shorter. And after that, some details. Let's say detail. And inside we are going to have two spans. First one will be username. Let's say John Doe. And the second one will be the date. Let's give class names. And that's all. Let's give our style. And after we can create different items. I will say, let's actually give class name here. Subtitle. Like that. Okay, I will say color will be gray, font size will be 16, and font weight will be 400. And for this one, it's going to be smaller. And as you can see, we don't have any space here. Let's give. And what about this item? We are going to take care of these items, but before, let's create the first one. After giving style and creating other items, we can take care of this. So I will say display flags, align item center, and gap between them. And for image container, flags will be 1. And for the text container, flags will be 4. By the way, where is our image? Oh, okay, it's here, of course. I didn't give position relative. And we cannot see it that because we don't have any height. You can give here any custom height, but I'm going to use here aspect ratio, and it's going to be 1:1. The height and width will be exactly the same size. In the previous video, I showed some awesome CSS tips and tricks. It's a really short video, I highly recommend to watch it. There are some tricks just like this. Let's see. Okay, perfect. And I can make this circle and add here a border. Let's say image, border radius, and border will be 3 pixels, solid and light gray. And of course, don't forget object fit. Okay, I forgot class name, I think. Oh. Okay, so let's take care of those texts and after we can create some more. Firstly, I'm gonna make this vertical, display flags, flags direction, and gap. And after that, I can use my title description. Did I give any class name? Okay, I didn't. Of course, we have title here, so I'm gonna say post title. Font size will be 18 and font weight will be bigger. And finally, I will say color is gonna be our variable soft text color. And after that, for the detail, I can decrease this font size. It's gonna be 12. For this date, by the way, I can give here a dash as we did before, and its color will be gray. Okay, so what about this category? Again, we are gonna have different colors, but before, let's take care of the main container. Remember, its class name is category. I'll write it here. It's before title. I will say padding from top and bottom 3, left and right 8. I will give some border radius 10 pixels. Font size will be small and the color will be white. Okay, we can't see because we don't have any background. Let's take this category and travel. Background color will be this orange color. Okay, as you can see, again, its size is too high. It's gonna be maximum content. Right now, I can create some others. Let's see how many. Okay, we have 4. I will take this link. 2, 3, 4. Let's actually give some other categories. I will say culture. Let's say food and fashion. So I'm gonna copy and paste my colors like that. And perfect. So let's give space between them. To do that, I'm gonna use the container. Remember, we have our items here. I will say flags direction column. Gap between each item will be 35 pixels. Perfect. And also I can give space between here and here for top and bottom. Margin top 35 pixels and bottom will be a little bit more. Okay, so let's create another item. I mean this container. Actually, I can duplicate all of them. And I'm gonna change this subtitle and title. Okay, we already used them. Let's change here, the second one. We don't need this. And this main title. Okay, so let's get rid of those images. Let's see. Okay, perfect. And between them, I'm going to create another container, and it's going to be our categories. Again, title, subtitle, and our categories container, and it's going to include different categories. So I'm going to come here. I will duplicate this. It's going to be discovered by topic, categories, and after that, let's create our category list. And I'm going to be using link, so we can click and open up the blog page just like this. I can give here any category name, and I will say style. And again, class name, styles, category item, and one more, the category name. So let's create more. I will duplicate. Actually, I can directly copy paste. There is nothing important here. We have other items and their class names. Of course, it's a huge component. You can split them. Let's actually do that. I will say menu posts. Like that. And I can take here any props that we can fetch data, and also we can add here with image or not. Let's actually add this here, and I will come here and copy these items. I will cut and paste here. Let's import link and image. Of course, we don't have any image, so I can actually copy the other one. Like that. And I can write here condition. If it's with image. Let's do the same thing for others. Okay. Right now I can use this component here. And I will say with image, true, and this one. And it's going to be false. As you can see, it's exactly the same. Of course, I can take this style and paste inside my component style. Where is our menu post? Here. Like that. Okay, nothing has changed. Perfect. Oops, it's not ours. Okay, there's a problem because we don't have styles. Menu posts, import styles from menu post module CSS posts. Okay, perfect. It works as you expected. So you can do the same thing for those category lists. I will copy here. Actually, I will cut and create new component, menu categories. and I will paste it here. Let's import the link. And finally, I can create my CSS file. Let's copy this and paste here. Okay. So I can close here. We have only titles. And I can use this module. Let's see. We are gonna do exactly the same thing as we did here. Remember, different colors. So firstly, I'll say category item. Actually, let's start with this list. Firstly, I will give my margin 35 and 60. And it's gonna be display flags. Flags will be wrap. So when we shrink the page, our items will be spread to other lines and gap will be 20. And for each item, I'm gonna give some padding from top and bottom, left and right. I will give border radius and font size will be 14. Of course, we didn't call our component. Let's call menu categories. Perfect. And let's give our colors here. I will drag the paste. And perfect. It's that easy. Let's open up this dark mode. It looks really nice. And what else? Let's create those buttons. If you remember, we have a component for those buttons. I will create here 2 individual buttons. Styles.button. Another one, and the first one will be previous page. And the second one will be next page. Oh, what's this third one? Let's remove and let's give style. I will just say display flags and I'm gonna separate them using justify content and space between. And I'm gonna make them red and give some padding. A 100 pixels. I'm gonna delete the border. Let's give our padding and background color. Text color will be white. And cursor will be pointer. That's all. And finally, let's take care of this footer. We have 2 sections, left and right side. And it includes this div, logo and title, any description here, and social icons. And for the right side, we are going to have items, and each item includes a title and some links. Let's do that. I'm going to close them and open up my footer. The first one will be information, and the second one will be links. And inside, we are going to have logo container, which includes our logo. Let's say logo.png. I'm going to give some width and height. It's going to be 50. So I don't have to create any container, image container. And after I will say h1 tag and llama block. Let's say logo text. And after this div, we are going to have this text. Let's create a p tag and paste here. And its class name will be description. And finally, icons. (18 pixels) and others. Finally, this side, I'm gonna create a list. And it's gonna have a title, let's say links, and after different links here, home page, 3 more, and I'm gonna give class name for this link because its weight will be a little bit different. Let's say list title. And finally, I'm gonna duplicate this. It's gonna be tags and social. Okay, let's see. We are ready to give our style. Let's open up here. And firstly, I'm gonna give some margin top. And I will say display flags, justify content, space between. And color will be soft text color. Okay, there is no space here. Let's give some padding. 20 to 0. And after that, let's start with this info. Actually, I will give flags 1. And what was the other one? Links. And again, display flags, flags direction column, and gap between each item will be 14 pixels. Like this. And for this logo container, I'm gonna give some gap. For the logo text, font size will be bigger. Okay, and for the description, I can decrease font weight. It's gonna be lighter. And finally, those icons. I will give some space. By the way, I can give some margin here, maybe. Let's say 10, and after gap. Okay. And what about here? Let's check our example. As you can see, it starts from here. So I will say display flags, justify content, flags, and for each list, it's gonna be vertical. Gap will be 10 and font weight 300. Okay, let's give some space between them. Like that. And for those titles, remember, we have list title. I will just say font weight bold. Perfect. And again, I forgot responsive design for this part. Let's take care of this footer first, and after we can take care of here. We are just gonna remove this menu, and I will say if it's smaller than 1024, I'm gonna decrease this space. By the way, they are not vertically centered. Display flags, align item center. And let's create our media query. 1024. And for links, gap will be, let's say, 50. Oops, I forgot writing and perfect. And if it's smaller, as you can see, this space is not enough anymore. In this case, I'm gonna make this container flags direction column. Let's duplicate. For the container, flags direction column, and gap between items will be 30. And I can separate those items. Justify content space between. Okay, it's not 100%. Okay, perfect. Maybe I can increase here. Let's say 50. And if it's even smaller, I'm just gonna decrease this size, font size. Let's remove here. Okay, and what about here? Let's shrink. Okay, there is no problem. And if it's small, firstly, I'm gonna delete this image. Let's open up cart module. $12.80, and image container will be display none. Okay, and if it's smaller, I'm gonna delete this menu. I will copy this and open up my menu module. If it's 1024, container will be display none. Perfect, we have only our items. Awesome. It looks really nice. So we finished our home page. So let's take care of our category page. It's really easy. We are not gonna do anything different. Let's see. We have again our cart list, this menu. We are just gonna add this title. That's all. So let's create our page. I will close everything here. And inside app directory, I'm gonna create my page, and it's gonna be blog page. Blog page or category page, whatever you say. I will say blog page module CSS. Okay, I will just add here a title, style block. This title is gonna change according to our search query. For example, category will be sport, and it's gonna be sport, and this color will be different. Let's give class name. And after that, remember our home page. I will create here a content div, and inside I'm gonna add my cart list and menu. We are gonna take our search parameter and pass it to our cart list. And it's gonna take that parameter and make a fetch request and show all these items. So I'm just gonna make this content display flex, and I'm gonna add a style for this title. That's all. Let's open up. I set container is gonna be styles. Okay. As you can see, they are not horizontal. Actually, we don't even need this container. I will just say title and content. And it's gonna be display flex. Gap will be 50. For this title, background color will be, let's say, coral. Color will be white. I'm gonna give some padding from top and bottom, left and right, and text align will be center. Oops, center. And that's all. This is how easy to create websites using reusable components. And what about single page when I click here, it's going to open up any page here and it's going to show our single post. Of course, we don't have our page. Let's create inside app directory. Remember how we are doing this. I will say square brackets, and inside you can write post ID, post slug, whatever you want, but I'm gonna use slug because it's important for SEO. Instead of writing here any random post number, we are gonna show our title. And using this title, we are gonna fetch our data. Let's create our page. Single page. Let's create module. I will copy this. I will say container. And here. And call this style here. Okay. As you can see, it's here. By the way, I'm changing this dark and light mode all the time. I hope you are not watching this at night. I'm so sorry. Actually, let's make this dark. And let's open up any Slack here. And as you can see, we are going to have our title, user information, and image. And again, we are going to create content div, and we are going to add another section here, but this site will be again our menu. Let's do that. Actually, let's close everything here and open up. So let's remove this and create another container. I will say info container. And after we are going to have the content, which includes our post and menu. Remember, it's flex 2. It's going to be flex 5. So let's start with this info container. We are going to have text container, image container, and text container includes this title and user div. Image container. I will say fill and I will give class name so I can apply object fit. And inside here, let's create title and user div. And again, another image here. Let's move this here. Actually, let's give our example. And user text container. And we are going to have here our username and date. Okay. Let's separate our container and give here a width and height so we can see our image. I will move this here and I will say info container. Align item center and gap between image and text will be 50 pixels. I will say text container flex 1 and image container flex 1. And I'm gonna give here height and position will be relative. Let's give quickly object fit. Okay, it's still here. Now that's because of this image container. Below text container, I will just give 50 pixels. And right now I will increase this title size and give some margin here. Let's say 64, margin bottom, but I didn't give class name. Okay. For this user, it's going to be display flex, and for this information, it's going to be display flex again, but flex direction column. And inside this image container, we have our image, let's say avatar, and change this class name. And I will say border radius 50%. And of course, object fit. For this text container, display flags, flags direction column, gap between items will be 5 pixels, and color will be soft, let's say var soft text color. Okay, maybe let's increase this size and weight. And perfect. Right now I can create my description and this comment section. Actually, we can create here another component for those comments. But before, let's separate them, that content and this menu. Remember, we have content here, display flags, gap, and that's all. And after that, inside this post, I'm gonna create my description. Let's just create some random text. Actually, I can create more p tag. So basic div, I'm gonna need another div, and it's gonna be description. And inside this div, I can create my content, my texts, headers, or whatever. It's too small. Okay. As you can see, I forgot giving flags for my content for this post. Flags will be 5 because its flags is 2, and I can give some margin top, 60 pixels. I want to increase this font size, it's too small. Description and p tag inside, I will say font size 20 pixels and font weight will be 300. And I can give margin between p tags. And finally, our comments. To do that, I'm going to create new component, but before, let's take care of this responsive design. Actually, we can do it after comment section. I'm going to close them. Inside components, comments. Styles from commands module CSS. Okay, let's call it in our single page. After this div, I will say comment, and inside this div, I can call my component. And let's come back here and let's see what we are gonna need. Firstly, we are gonna need this title. After that, we are gonna create a div which includes this input and button. But be careful, if we are not logged in, we are not supposed to see this container. So again, I'm gonna write a fake status, and using that status, I'm gonna write a condition. And after that, we are gonna write our comments. We are gonna have a list and each individual comment. Let's create this title first. And let's create here status authenticated, and I will write my condition status equals authenticated. Show here a container. If it's not, let's call here a link, and I will say login to write a comment, href, and login page. And here I'm gonna create a div, let's say write, and inside, by the way, let's import this. Actually, let's create a text area. I will delete those. I will give a placeholder, write a comment. And class name will be, let's say, input. Let's make this self-closed. And after that, a button, send. Okay, and after that, let's create comments list. I will say comments and a single comment. And inside this, we are going to have our user div. It's exactly the same. And description. So let's create user, which has an image and user information. I'm gonna give my class names and let's give our source. Width and height is gonna be 50 pixels. Finally, after this user, I will just create my description. And let's give a style, and after we can create other comments. I will take this here. And firstly, let's give here margin top. And after title, this title. I'm going to change its color. It's going to be soft color. Margin bottom, 30 pixels. Like that. And for this div, remember, right, display flags, align item center, justify content, space between. And for the input, padding 20 with 100%. Perfect. And for this button, I'm gonna give some padding, border radius, color will be white, background will be this green color. Padding, background color will be teal, text color will be white, it's gonna be bold. I'm gonna delete the border, and border radius will be 5 pixels. That's a cursor pointer. Awesome. And what about this user? Actually, we did this before. I'm just gonna write quickly. Display flags, align item center, gap between image and text, and I will say margin bottom because I want to give space here. And for this image, I'm gonna make it circle and object fit. What about this user info? It's gonna be vertical, remember. Let's give gap between them. And color will be soft. And for the username, font weight will be bigger. Where is our username? Here. Font weight 500. And for date, so what about this description? I'm gonna increase the font size and decrease the font weight, like that. And there is no space here. Let's give. After this right container, remember, we have comments and comment. This is our main div, the parent div. I will say 50, and for each comment, again, margin bottom. If you want to, you can use display flags, flag extraction, but I directly gave margin bottom. Oops. Of course, top, not bottom. Okay, Let's create other comments for the design purpose, and let's see. It looks pretty nice. So what about responsive design? As you can see, there is no problem here. But actually, I can decrease this size. At the very beginning, there is no problem, but after the first breakpoint, it's still too big. Let's actually open our page style here. Single page and comments. Okay. Let's quickly create media screen. The biggest screen is going to affect our title, and font size will be 54. Okay. And when it's smaller, it's going to be much smaller. Other breakpoint, let's say 48.